somehow, and there are a lot of historical reasons for this, gun ownership in this country became an ideological issue and a partisan issue in ways that it shouldn't be.
He was so good at that. Gosh, I loathe that man. He was so good at pushing his filthy communist ways and acting like anyone who opposed him was being political. It's not ideological. Just let me disarm you. And you know what he loved to do more than anything else? I will despise him for this more than anything else Barack Obama did. He's the one who mainstreamed running to the camera after a mass shooting. You never saw that prior to Obama. Now, every Democrat does it across the country. They're practically gleeful when a bunch of kids get mowed down in school. Joining me now, Jim Pfaff, president of the Conservative Caucus. Gosh, it used to drive me crazy watching him do that crap, Jim.
He weaponized the Oval Office in ways more than any president had before him. Remember, just 5 days before the 2008 election, when he was first elected, he says, we're 5 days away from fundamentally transforming America. There's no doubt that what he meant by that was not to go away from the Constitution and to move away from every traditional norm, traditional institution that had made this country great and really made us prosperous. And we're seeing the end result of that happening even to this day. In fact, every major problem we're looking at it probably has its origin and root in Barack Obama's presidency.
Jim, Obama, people remember slightly his background as much as they could possibly remember, because how the media bent over backwards to cover it up. But take as much time as you need and explain once again this guy's background. He was not the standard run-of-the-mill Democrat at all. This dude is an America-hating commie from way back.
There's no doubt about it. In fact, he was trained indirectly by an America-hating commie named Saul Alinsky. You remember back in the day when we were talking about Barack Obama, and he was touting himself being a community organizer, and that's what he used to do. And when you would bring up the Saul Alinsky problem, people would tell you, what are you doing calling him a communist, and even calling Saul Alinsky a communist? Saul Alinsky, his mentor was John L. Smith, the union organizer, very avowedly communist union organizer from the early 20th century. Listen, I'm not trying to beat up unions entirely here. I have my negatives with unions, but not all people that get involved with unions are communists. The problem is unions were founded in this country from a communist impetus to radically transform America. That was their whole purpose and goal. Saul Alinsky developed the most precise methodology for doing that. When you look at, for example, all the wokeness in politics, ESG, DEI, this is all has its foundations in community organizing. What Saul Alinsky did in the 1960s was he found a way to extract money from major corporations so that he could fund his efforts by threatening them to harm their businesses. Barack Obama did that in a sincere and deep way during his presidency. I mean, everything that we have a problem with woke culture has its origins in Barack Obama being able to utilize the office of the presidency to fundamentally transform America if he could.
Yeah, he was one of the first ones. I realized the Clintons love to do this kind of crap too, but not to the level Obama did with weaponizing his Justice Department. He just looked at his Justice Department as if it was his plaything, a weapon he could aim at all his political opponents, and he did it well.
And again, don't forget that Eric Holder, during the Fast and Furious debate, where we found out that the United States government was sending guns down to cartels in Mexico that were finding their way back up on the street. By the way, don't talk to me about Second Amendment, NRA, whatever organization that stands for guns in this country. Don't tell me that they're the problem. Barack Obama was that problem. And it makes you kind of wonder. And remember, Eric Holder was reprimanded by Congress because of the Fast and Furious thing. Don't forget, it might be possible that that whole gun running operation was intended to bring chaos to the United States that they could use to change the political debate. You always wonder this, but yes, beyond that, you referred to him weaponizing the Justice Department. In every way possible, Eric Holder, under Barack Obama's direction, and certainly because Eric Holder thinks the same way, went out to weaponize politics for the advantage of the advantage of Democrats against Republicans. The IRS was weaponized against the Tea Party movement to thwart their effort to take this country back, which we saw the beginnings of, but was quickly squashed, and also not only by Barack Obama, but by some Republicans who didn't want it to happen either. But really, Barack Obama utilized every lever of power that he had as president to change how we do politics in this country. All of the problems we look at, the weaponization of government against Donald Trump, and the persistent effort of our deep state to keep conservatives from having any effect, whether it's on social media platforms or anywhere else, in the media even. This all began with the Obama administration. We are the chaos that we see in our politics right now is a direct relation to Barack Obama.
Jim, Obama's foreign policy was dreadful in every way, but anyone, even a nonpartisan observer, could see he really seemed to have a real axe to grind with Israel, snubbing every chance he got to twist that knife, he twisted it. Now, I understand people not really caring about other countries, but he really was bothered by this nation. Why? Where'd that come from?
It's hard to know specifically because he hasn't said things clearly enough in public, or do we have any records of discussions with him to put a fine, measure of understanding on it. But his father was a Muslim and from Africa, was an anti-colonialist. So it's either direct sympathy with Muslim sentiment, which I'm not entirely certain is the case, but it does come from this colonialist idealism that Barack Obama clearly was part of, that would resent not just Israel, but any country that came into power in a local area. So I think that's motivating a whole lot of it. The other part of it was that Benjamin Netanyahu, who was prime minister during Barack Obama's administration, was a conservative who believed in and still does believe in fundamental principles of liberty. And that really offended Barack Obama's sentiment because he doesn't believe in fundamental principles of liberty. Lastly, he falls into that basic Democrat tendency that is anti-Israel, as much as they want to claim otherwise, because they really do not want Israel to succeed in that area. They have political reasons to connect with the Arab countries there, and they have a disbelief in these principles of democracy. Don't forget, Barack Obama's administration spent, I think the number was $800,000 in an effort to take down Benjamin Netanyahu during one of their election cycles. They were literally involved with American tax dollars to take down Benjamin Netanyahu.
What about Venezuela, Cuba? I remember that picture from Cuba of Obama going down there. Why? What was that about?
Well, again, I think it's this proclivity to be closer to communism ideologically than to be part of a free market, freedom-loving liberty ideology. Listen, Barack Obama is not a constitutionalist. He was he studied constitutional law and all that. He was not a constitutionalist by any stretch of the imagination. Without a doubt, he wanted to fundamentally transform us away from constitutional principles. But in empathy towards that, he loved people like Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro, who was still leading Cuba at the time. And frankly, it's just an ideological alignment. So there's always been this desire among Democrats, all the way back into Teddy Kennedy back in the 1980s, and some Democrats before him, who had this sympathy with communist Russia during the Cold War and with communist ideals. I mean, again, what's playing out right now? Look at what's happening in Brazil right now. What's taking place in Brazil is precisely what Barack Obama was working towards during his presidency: a shutting down of political opposition, a utilization of the levers of the judicial system to thwart political opponents, and then a building within the structure of the government system to inoculate, against conservative ideas. And constitutional ideas. That's what Barack Obama did. He's very third world in that regard.
I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.